Hi, this is Ed Spurliers. I hope you enjoy this latest episode of Random Trek. Thank you very much. Yeah?
Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Random Trek. I am your mind-controlled captain, Christopher Ingle, joined as always by my amazingly Greek first officer, the man who has been around since 10,000 BC, Commander Brennan, the Mystical Bar. Brennan, how we doing?
This will be interesting.
Yes. Today, Season 3, Episode 10 of the original series, Plato's Stepchildren.
Yep.
This is the episode. There are lots of episodes that when people talk about the original series come up quite frequently. Space Seed, Corbinite Maneuver,
Balance of Terror.
Balance of Terror. Oh yes, Tholian Web, great episodes. This one gets talked about for a completely different reason than all the others. And as we go through it, I think you'll know that reason.
Yep.
Brennan, that reason aside, what were your first overall thoughts on this episode?
Well, I had never seen this one, so this all the way through. So this is quite new. I found it. You know how some people talk about how wacky the original series could be?
Yeah.
This contains some of that wackiness.
It is absolutely nuts. Let's get into it. I'll kind of give a breakdown of what happened, and then we'll talk about this episode. So,
Yep.
Kirk, Spock, and McCoy beam down to this planet where they are investigating a distress call. When they are there, they are greeted by a little person. His name is Alexander. He leads the landing party to meet the rest of the group, who have adopted a Greek physique and Greek culture. They call themselves Platonians in honor of the Greek philosopher Plato. So all of the Platonians except Alexander possess telekinetic powers. The ruling class of this planet have become arrogant as a result of their power, believing they could do as they please because they have the power. The Platonians lure the Enterprise to the planet because their leader, Parman, needs medical attention. Even something as small as a cut could be fatal to Platonians, and that's what's happened here. Is he got cut, Parman, and now McCoy's trying to treat him to the best of his ability. After McCoy treats him, Parman demands that McCoy remain on the planet and treat the other Platonians. Kirk objects, and the Platonians punish him as a result. Now, Alexander tries to tell Kirk and Spock that Parman wishes to kill them, but he's afraid to. Interesting. Parman then goes to humiliate Kirk and Spock over and over as McCoy watches, making him agree to the planet or else. Later, the Platonians use their power and force other Enterprise officers to the planet for their entertainment, including Nurse Chapel and Lieutenant Uhura. So McCoy takes a sample of Alexander's blood and isolates and identifies the mineral that is allowing them to have their special powers. In the food and water that they have, it's very abundant. So that's how it gets into their system. McCoy is able to make a serum and injects Kirk and Spock with doses for them to be able to have twice the power of Parman. What he notices is that Alexander has a lack of pituitary growth, part of being a little person. And he can't metabolize the chironide and gaining the telepathic ability. So Alex declares, though, that he doesn't want the ability. He doesn't want to become like the Platonians. He's talking to Kirk and asks him where he comes from and if size matters. And Kirk says that size, color, and species don't matter. And Alexander asks, please take me with you, Kirk. So now, while Kirk and the others are waiting for this serum to take effect, Parman forces the four, all dressed in Greek clothing, to perform for them. Alexander gets very angry watching them being humiliated and playing tricks by the Platonians, and he tries to attack Parman with a knife, but he fails. Kirk uses his new abilities to defeat Parman and save Alexander's life. Parman then promises to mend his bullying ways, but Kirk doesn't believe him and warns Parman if he goes back on his word, this can be redone again to anyone, and they can be defeated. Kirk promises to send medical technicians to the planet as long as Platonians behave themselves. Alex requests to go to the Enterprise to start a new life somewhere else in the galaxy. And Kirk contacts the Enterprise. I have a little surprise for you. I'm bringing a visitor aboard. Little surprise. That's how we end it, Kirk. A little surprise. But this episode is, I'm just going to say it. This is actually an awful episode. I do not like this episode at all.
It's not
And I am not even getting to the moment yet, and we will. We will talk the moment. But let's get everything else out of the way.
I will say that Michael Dunn as Alexander, I quite enjoyed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a poor use for a little person show. Absolutely.
Look, if you got a rotten apple, chances are there's still a spot on it that's edible.
But his performance, I think I actually quite liked. So
it's earnest, but the others, it's so overdone, and the acting by the Enterprise crew as they're being forced to do the things that they're supposed to do is so bad.
You know all the jokes that people make about William Shatner's overacting? It's right here.
Yes. I mean, and when they're being controlled, their moments are jerky. It's like they're trying to resist, but like it's just awful. It's not good acting at all. And this premise doesn't even really work for me.
And the third season of the original series, you have to admit, is rather weak.
It is, but this is the episode you choose to put the moment in. This is what you choose.
Yeah.
So,
oh boy.
Let's go into detail about this. The moment, also known as the kiss.
Yep.
Kirk and Uhura are forced into a kiss, a very passionate kiss. Fortunately, Kirk still has his eyes and he looks at the Platonians and you could see spit and fire and anger, and he hates this and he's resisting it, but he does it. Now, this made waves in the world because this is the first major time that a black actress and a white actor kissed on screen. It is not the first
and this is 1968.
It is 1968. This is not the first interracial kiss that has existed. But it's often claimed to be that way, and that's why people talk about this. But in reality, that is not even true as well, because a decade before, there was, and I'll argue it, a much bigger show with a much bigger name who had a kiss on screen pretty regularly. Maybe Lucy, Desi, ring a bell for anyone?
Lucy, you got some explaining to do.
I Love Lucy had the first interracial kiss on television. And nobody threw a fit. No one threw a fit about it, but partly because Desi Arnaz, though he is Latin, is still very light-skinned. Nobody threw a fit about this. And there was nobody bigger than Lucy at the time. And it's very funny to me that who was in charge of Star Trek? Lucille Ball. Or more aptly, Desilu Studios. Though she wasn't directly, was her studio, obviously. So while the idea of this kiss is profound, the context around it makes it opposite what we remember it for. The forced nature of it, this forced kiss, does not bode well for these characters. And again, we know that character-wise, it's not their fault. They're being controlled. We understand that. But the fact that they're forced to do it kind of has some nasty undertones to it. What do you think?
I think that in many ways it doesn't count because it's first. If this were a romantic kiss, then that would have been a different story.
Yeah.
But because it is a forced kiss, it doesn't really, as much as people like to talk about it being a big moment, which it was at the time, there's no romance behind it.
Now, initially,
And so
this
it's really
didn't.
just kind of cold, is what it is.
Initially, this actually, you would think this kiss, especially in certain parts of the United States, would have caused massive waves. Surprisingly, it didn't. So NBC executives learned about the kiss and they were very nervous that this would anger the TV stations, especially in the Deep South. There were actually very few complaints about the scene. Nichols herself says in an interview in 1968, Plato's Stepchildren received a huge response. We received one of the largest batches of fan mail ever, all of it very positive, with many addressed to me from girls wondering how it felt to kiss Captain Kirk, and many to him from guys wondering the same about me. However, almost no one found the kiss offensive, except from a single mildly negative letter, one white Southerner who wrote, I am totally opposed to the mixing of the races. However, anytime a red-blooded American boy like Captain Kirk gets a beautiful dame in his arms that looks like a hurrah, he ain't gonna fight it. And Nichols notes that for her, the most memorable episode of their last season was indeed that episode. So critically, it actually dodged a bullet, surprisingly. You know, and that's really interesting on a cultural perspective. That we're in the middle of the fight for civil rights. The Civil Rights Act has already been passed. Things are going on right now. Tensions are high. This happens, and you think, and I would have thought, as the executives did, this is going to go bad, and it didn't. Why do you think that, Brennan? Why do you think that so many people were okay with this?
Well, they often talk about this um that science fiction is very good at commenting on the world right now,
Mm-hmm.
but doing it in a way that might be a little bit easier to digest for some people
Right.
than it would be if we were addressing the subject directly
Mm-hmm.
in a real world context. You know, for example, let that be your next battlefield.
Mm-hmm.
Is able to comment very well on race without doing it in a way that makes people uncomfortable.
Right.
And obviously, you should make people uncomfortable sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that science fiction has a more fantastical element might make these issues easier to deal with in that kind of context
Mm-hmm.
than in
Well,
dealing with it in a guess who's coming to dinner kind of way.
worldwide culture is an interesting look at this too, because American culture is where I thought the hotbed would happen. Was actually in the UK that this episode was a severe problem. The BBC refused to screen and show this episode because of unpleasant content. They felt that the views of what they called torture and sadism were unacceptable and unpleasant. The word unpleasant was used. Um, here's the interesting thing. Not the only episodes that have ever been censored in such a way. The Empath, Whom Gods Destroy, and Miri, two of those we have reviewed, also were censored by the BBC. Now, part of the reason they did this, the UK at the time treated Star Trek as a children's television show, and therefore restricted episodes that included any overt depictions of torture and or sexuality that was not appropriate for children. So, for example, Marta's dance in Whom Gods Destroy was too sexual for it to be recommended for children's viewing, and so it was taken away.
Mhm.
Torture in The Empath, the torture of Kirk, once again, taken away. So, culturally, it's really interesting that everything was okay here in the United States, yet it was the UK who was just totally against it.
I guess that was the problem for them.
It has shown now. Now it has, but it was a lot more strict back then.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
So, I mean, unfortunately, that's really the only memorable element to this episode.
Yeah, that and the bad acting. I remember
Yeah,
for the bad acting.
other than William Shatner overdoing it.
Oh, it's
When
just
people make fun
terrible.
of how Captain Kirk is overdone, this episode's a good example.
It really is. And I get it's within the story and the reason why. I do. Like he's resisting it. I get it. But can you overdo overdone? I think it can.
Shatner can. And we say that with all love and respect to William Shatner, of course.
Oh, of course, yeah. And it is what it is.
But, the here and
Um,
here moments of Kirk. Yeah.
mhm, yeah. Otherwise, you know, even the story of the kiss is not really worth it because, as I said, this is not the first time, and I don't have the evidence to back it up. But if I remember correctly, it's not even the first white on black kiss. I don't think so, but it was the biggest. That is definitely true.
Indeed.
Nothing was bigger than Star Trek, at least at the time.
Yeah.
Oh, final thoughts.
That's it.
Unfortunately,
Unless you want to see that just piece of cultural trivia.
yeah, it's not great. Unless you like overacting, then more power to
Or meme, yeah. Oh
you. Well, next week we have Next Generation,
boy.
TNG. You think we're gonna get some bad acting, bad overacting?
Well, you never know.
All right, here we go. So it's not bad acting.
No.
This may be the greatest Star Trek episode of all time.
Oh,
It is definitely the highest rated and the one with the most accolades. Season 5, episode 25, The Inner Light.
oh man. You're trying to make me cry, aren't you?
That is a very good
Yeah,
episode.
that's kind of the opposite of this one.
Oh yeah, it's Picard. It's Patrick Stewart getting to do Shakespeare without doing Shakespeare.
Yeah,
It's so good. Writing. Oh, we're gonna talk about this. Maybe we get a guest for this one. This is one of the special ones.
indeed.
We get somebody on with this one. But yeah, Inner Light, was that the season finale, or that was the penultimate episode, I think.
I think the finale of season 5 was Time Zero.
Yeah, it's time. This is before Time Zero, so it's the penultimate episode. This was a good season.
Yeah,
5 and 6 great next gen.
very good.
Very good season. And we get to see the Inner Light. Another, we have talked about Picard and the Borg and how that influenced him.
Yeah.
Next week, let's talk about how this probe influences Picard.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Brennan, where can the people find you?
You can find me on Blue Sky and Renmart at bluesky.social. And you can find me on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify at Page Turners They Were Made.
You can find me on Twitch, on Twitter at Ingle 1984. Before we go, looks like a little bit of good news for Strange New Worlds fans.
Yep.
The release date for season 3 has been announced. Looks like we are getting season 3 on July 17th in 2 months. Nice. This is going to be really, and it'll be July through September 11th. 10 episodes. That is fabulous, and they're already working on season 4. Great.
Yes.
I like that. All right. Good news to end the episode. But as always, we end every episode. Applause. Live long and prosper.
Peace and long life.